Greetings and welcome to another Re:M-Block screencast. In this screencast we're going to take a look at how Yul handles logging. Let's dive in. So we've got a contract here with a couple of event types defined, and we've got some functions that emit these events. Events are pretty straightforward. They basically are a definition of a signature, of event type, and then the values that you want to emit, and they can be indexed or not indexed. Indexed basically means that they're stored on chain. So here we've got a log event type 1, which emits two indexed variables, both uint256, and then we've got another log event type that emits two variables, but one is indexed and the other is not. Then I've got two functions here that emit event 1 and two more that emit event 2. The first function that emits event 1 is using pure solidity. So this is how you would do this in Solidity. You just simply use the emit keyword and then the event that you want to emit with the data that you want to emit in the event. So if we deploy this contract and we call that function solidity emit event 1, then we can see, if we expand the logs here, we can look at the event that was emitted. And you can see here that the event was emitted with the arguments as expected. Now, just for your information, the topic here represents a hash of the event signature. So it's a Keccak 256 hash of the event signature. This is a 32-byte piece of data that's completely unique for this particular event type. Now, when we create, or I should say emit the event using Yul, we have to manually generate this Keccak 256 of this event, as we can see in this function here. So in this function, I'm emitting exactly the same event as in the previous function. Let's scroll down and just compare them. But I've got some comments in here that shows you really what's going on. So basically, to emit the event of log type 1, this one, using Yul, we need to use the log3 opcode. Now, I got this from the docs here, so you can see log3 function signature looks like this. What this basically means is that the first and the second parameter, that's P and S, denote the area of memory to return for non-indexed variables. Well, this event doesn't have any non-indexed variables, so we would set these both to 0, as you can see we're doing here. Now, the first topic, which is T1, this is a special topic, if you like, because it represents the hash of the event signature. So we need to generate that, and in Solidity, this is done for us under the hood, but in Yul, we have to generate it ourselves. So actually, what I've done here is I've cheated a bit, and I'm using Solidity to generate the signature, and then I'm passing the signature in here. But it's just for readability, so we can see how this signature is generated. And as I mentioned, it is literally just the interface, if you like, of the event that we want to emit. So I just take the signature of this event without the parameter names or the index keyword, and that is the signature that we will use. Now, as defined earlier, T1 or topic 1 is the signature. Now, following that, we just emit or include the values that we want to include as part of the event that we want to emit. And because this is a log3 opcode, we get 3 topics, and we've already used the first one up, so we've got 2 left, and that's where we put our data, A and B. So in this case, I want to emit 999 and 888. So let's take a look at calling this function. So this is Yul emit event 1, and if we just move this up, and we can scroll down, we can see that we get exactly the same event, right? So it's log event type 1. This topic should be the same, so it's 2459 ending in D41, and if we look up at the previous event that was run using Solidity, it's the same, right? So that's good, and we can see that is the case. Now, that's how we can emit this type. Now, one other thing to test is for non-indexed events, or indexed that include data that are not indexed. Now, in Solidity, this is straightforward. We just simply emit the event again in exactly the same way. In fact, the two functions are pretty much identical. And Solidity takes care of the fact that some data is, or parameter is not indexed or is indexed. So in this case, we've got this event, which is log event type 2. The first parameter, foo, is indexed, and the second is not. So if we call this function here, and we look at the events data in Remix, we can see that it's all output as expected, foo and bar, but it's difficult to tell in Remix at least, like which event is indexed and which is not. So what I can do is I can just copy the transaction hash. So I can take the transaction hash and call the web3 get transaction receipt function in Remix, which gives me this JSON receipt. And then I can paste that into the online JSON viewer and expand the logs and take a look at the topics. And what you'll notice is there's only two topics. We've got the topic here, which is the hash, the Ketchak 256 hash of the event signature. And we've also got this DE. Now let's take a look firstly at the Ketchak 256. So we can actually use cast K and just confirm that that represents the Ketchak 256 of this event signature. It should match. So let's take a look again at the function. And if we look here, we got F5E3, and it matches the F5E3 and the function here. So you can see this is basically correct. That represents the Ketchak 256 of the event signature. The second part is DE. So if I open up Node and I type in DE, we should see that that represents 222, which is the number that we emitted in the signature, that is here. So what about the 11? 11, remember, is the bar data, which is not indexed. So where does that appear in the transaction receipt? Well, it's up here. It's part of the data here that is in the logs, but it's not part of the topics. So that's how we can tell when we look at a transaction receipt which part is indexed and which part of the event data is not indexed. So let's go back to our code and take a look at how we would do this in Yul. Now this is interesting because for non-indexed events, we need to make use of the first two parameters, which, remember, in the first example we set to 0 because we don't have any indexed events. But in this, we don't have any non-indexed events. In this example, we have some non-indexed events. So what we do is we need to store the value in memory first of all. So in this case, I'm just using mstore, and I'm storing it in the scratch space, and I'm storing the number 34. So I'm storing 34 at address 0. And then I use the log2 opcode, and I pass in the address space that I want to return as non-indexed data, followed by the event signature, followed by the data that is to be indexed. And when I run this function, which is down here, we can take a look at the events, and we can see that the data was indeed emitted as an event, and we can see the topic is as expected. So we just make use of get transaction receipt again and copy the JSON into the JSON log viewer and expand the logs. And you can see here that the data represents the 22. That's the 22 that is the hexadecimal 22 that is not indexed. That came from the memory. And then the 777 is here, which is the 309 in hex. And we can see that if we type it in here, we can see that that represents the 777, that's the index data. So that's a quick overview of how you can use logs in Yul. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you in the next video.